Have you ever felt completely alone in a crowded room? That gnawing emptiness that settles in your chest even when you're surrounded by people who care about you. I see those nods. I feel that resonance in the room right now. Just last week, I was sitting in a busy cafe watching people laugh and chat over their steaming cups of coffee, couples holding hands across tables, friends sharing stories, families enjoying Sunday brunch together. And there I was, in the middle of all that connection, feeling like I was watching life through a glass wall, able to see everything but somehow unable to touch it, to feel it, to be part of it. That's the paradox of modern loneliness, isn't it? We've never been more connected, yet we've never felt more alone. Our phones buzz with notifications, our social media feeds overflow with updates from hundreds of friends, and yet something's missing. Something profound, something essential to the human spirit. Was the last time you felt truly seen? Not just looked at, but really seen. When was the last time someone reached past your carefully curated social media presence, past your professional accomplishments, past all those masks we wear, and touched your soul? You see, loneliness isn't about being physically alone. It's about feeling disconnected from our authentic selves and from genuine human connection. It's about living in a world where we've mastered the art of surface-level interactions, but forgotten. Think about your daily interactions. How many times do you say, "I'm fine," when you're anything but fine? How often do you scroll through social media comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel? How many times have you wanted to reach out to someone, but stopped yourself because you didn't want to seem needy or vulnerable? The truth is, we're all carrying this burden of loneliness, but we're too afraid to talk about it. And we've convinced ourselves that feeling lonely means something's wrong with us, that we're somehow broken or unlovable. But what if I told you that your loneliness isn't a flaw? It's a signal, a powerful message from your soul telling you something important about your life. You see, loneliness is like hunger. Just as hunger tells us our body needs nourishment, loneliness tells us our soul needs connection. Real, authentic, soul-level connection. But here's where things get interesting. And this is crucial. Before we can truly connect with others, we need to learn how to connect with ourselves. Many of us run from loneliness. We try to drown it out with noise, endless entertainment, mindless scrolling, busy schedules, and superficial relationships. We fill every moment of silence with something, anything, to avoid facing that empty feeling inside. But what if, instead of running from our loneliness, we turned around and faced it? What if we saw it not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a teacher offering us profound wisdom about our lives? I remember a time when I was at the peak of my career, surrounded by people who admired my work, living what looked like a perfect life on paper. Yet every night, I'd come home to an emptiness that no amount of success could fill. It took me years to understand that this emptiness wasn't telling me I needed more achievements or more friends or more activities. It was telling me I needed more authenticity, more truth, more courage to be who I really am, not who I thought the world wanted me. This is where our journey begins, with this simple but powerful truth. The path out of loneliness doesn't start with finding the right people or creating the perfect social life. It starts with finding ourselves. It starts with understanding why we feel disconnected even when we're surrounded by others. You see, we live in a world that teaches us to seek connection through external validation. We measure our worth by our follower count, our likes, our retweets. We've learned to package ourselves into perfectly filtered images, carefully crafted posts, and socially acceptable personas. But real connection, the kind that dispels loneliness, can only happen when we're brave enough to be real, to be vulnerable, to be authentically ourselves. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, most connected. I bet those weren't moments when you were pretending to be someone you're not. They were moments when you felt safe enough to let your guard down, to be completely yourself, to share your truth without fear of judgment. We can't be authentic with others until we learn to be authentic with ourselves. And that's where most of us stumble. We're so busy trying to be what everyone else needs us to be that we've forgotten who we really are. We've forgotten how to sit with ourselves, how to listen to our own hearts, how to honor our own truth. That's why the journey out of loneliness begins with a simple but profound question. Who am I when nobody's watching? Who am I beneath all the roles I play, beneath all the masks I wear, beneath all the expectations I try to meet? Who am I at my core? This isn't just philosophical musing. It's the foundation of genuine connection, because when we don't know who we are, we end up trying to connect from a place of emptiness, seeking in others what we haven't yet found in ourselves. We end up in relationships that feel hollow because we're showing up as hollow versions of ourselves. And this brings us to the first key insight about loneliness. It often persists not because we lack people in our lives, but because we lack presence in our own life. We become strangers to ourselves. And that internal disconnection manifests as a feeling of isolation, even in a crowd. The good news is, this understanding gives us a place to start. Instead of desperately seeking connection outside ourselves, we can begin by reconnecting with our own heart, our own truth, our own authentic nature. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath all the layers of social conditioning and learned behaviors. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, when was the last time I felt completely, unabashedly myself? When was the last time I didn't edit my thoughts, filter my feelings, or modify my behavior to fit someone else's expectations? For many of us, this question brings up uncomfortable realizations. We might discover that we've been playing roles for so long that we're not even sure what authentic really means anymore. And that's okay. That awareness is the first step toward change. Because here's the truth about loneliness. It's not just telling us we need more connection. It's telling us we need more truth, more authenticity, more courage to be who we really are. It's calling us to a deeper level of self-awareness and self-acceptance. Think of it this way. If you were building a house, you wouldn't start with the roof. You'd start with the foundation. The same principle applies to building meaningful connections. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation upon which all other relationships. If that foundation is shaky, if you're disconnected from your own truth, your own values, your own authentic nature, then every relationship you try to build will feel unstable. This is why so many of us can feel lonely even in our closest relationships. We're trying to connect from a place of disconnection. We're trying to be seen while hiding who we really are. We're trying to be loved while still harboring deep doubts about our own lovability. The path forward begins with radical honesty, first with ourselves and then with others. It begins with the courage to look inside and face whatever we find there, to acknowledge our fears, our doubts, our insecurities, to embrace our quirks, our passions, our unique way of seeing the world, to stop apologizing for who we are and start celebrating what makes us uniquely ourselves. Because here's the beautiful paradise. The more we embrace our authentic selves, the more we give others permission to do the same. When we show up in the world as who we really are, we create a space for genuine connection. We send a signal to others that it's safe to be real, to be vulnerable, to be human. And that's where the magic happens. That's where loneliness begins to dissolve. Not because we found more people to fill our lives, but because we found the courage to fill our own lives with truth, with authenticity, with genuine presence. As we move forward in this exploration, remember this. Your loneliness is not a punishment. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a call to adventure, an invitation to discover who you really are beneath all the roles you play, an opportunity to build a relationship with yourself that's so strong, so authentic, that it naturally attracts the kind of connections your soul has been yearning for. In the next part of our journey together, we'll explore practical ways to begin this process of self-discovery and authentic connection. But for now, I want you to sit with this question. What would change in your life if you gave yourself permission to be completely, unabashedly yourself? What possibilities might open up if you stopped trying to fit in and started honoring your unique way of being in the world? You know what fascinates me? The invisible walls we build around ourselves, these walls that we think keep us safe, but actually keep us separate. These walls that we've constructed so carefully, brick by brick, year after year, experience by experience, disappointment by disappointment. Let's talk about these walls for a moment. Because until we understand what we built, we can't begin to transform it. These walls are made of our fears, our past hurts, our social conditioning, and most importantly, our beliefs about what we need to be in order to be accepted and loved. Think about the messages you've received throughout your life about who you should be, how you should act, what success looks like, what love looks like. These messages come from everywhere: family, society, media, education. They tell us we need to be stronger, smarter, more successful, more attractive, more everything. They tell us that vulnerability is weakness, that emotions need to be controlled, that we need to have it all figured out. And so we learn to edit ourselves. We learn to filter our thoughts, modify our behavior, hide our true feelings. We learn to present a carefully curated version of ourselves to the world, a version we think will be more acceptable, more lovable, more worthy of connection. The very strategies we use to try to connect with others are the exact same strategies that keep us feeling lonely. Because real connection can't happen through filters. It can't happen through masks. It can't happen when we're hiding our true selves behind walls of protection. Let me share something profound with you. The parts of yourself that you think make you unlovable, your sensitivities, your quirks, your struggles, your wounds, these are actually your bridges to genuine connection. Because it's through these aspects of ourselves that we connect with our shared humanity. When someone shares their struggles with you, when they show you their vulnerability, their imperfections, don't you feel more connected to them? Don't you feel a sense of relief knowing you're not alone in your human experience? That's because authenticity is magnetic. Vulnerability is compelling. Truth resonates with truth. But we've been taught the opposite. We've been taught to hide our struggles, to present only our strengths, to keep our wounds private. We've been taught that if people really knew us, really saw all of who we are, they wouldn't accept us, wouldn't love us, wouldn't want to connect with us. And so we find ourselves in this painful paradox, desperately wanting connection, while actively hiding the very parts of ourselves that make genuine connection possible. We end up performing instead of being, presenting instead of revealing, protect. This is why so many of our relationships feel superficial. This is why we can have hundreds of social media connections and still feel profoundly alone. This is why we can be in a long-term relationship and still feel like nobody really knows us. We're trying to connect through our personas instead of through our presence. But what if there was another way? What if instead of trying to become what we think others want us to be, we focused on becoming more fully who we actually are? What if, instead of hiding our vulnerabilities, we learned to embrace them as part of our unique human experience? There's a truth that might change everything for you. The very things you try to hide about yourself are often the things that make you most relatable to others. Your struggles, your fears, your imperfections, these aren't barriers to connection, they're bridges to connection. Because in sharing our truth, we give others permission to share theirs. Think about the people you feel most connected to. I bet they're not the ones who present a perfect facade. They're the ones who are real with you, the ones who share their struggles along with their victories, the ones who aren't afraid to be human in your presence. This is where true connection begins, with the courage to be real, with the willingness to let down our guards and let others see who we really are. Not the polished, perfect version we think we need to be, but the beautifully imperfect human being we actually are. But I know what you're thinking. I can feel the resistance in the room. But what if I get rejected? What if people don't accept the real me? What if being vulnerable leads to getting hurt? These are valid fears. They're human fears. And they deserve to be acknowledged. Yes, being authentic involves risk. Yes, showing your true self makes you vulnerable. Yes, not everyone will understand or accept the real you. But here's what's equally true. Continuing to hide behind walls guarantees loneliness. Continuing to perform instead of being present guarantees disconnection. Continuing to choose safety over authenticity guarantees that the deep connection you're yearning for will remain out of reach. The choice isn't between being vulnerable and being safe. The choice is between the slow suffocation of hiding who you are and the life-giving power of being authentic. Between the familiar pain of loneliness and the transformative possibility of real connection. Here's something crucial to understand. The goal isn't to tear down all your walls at once. The goal isn't to become completely vulnerable with everyone you meet. The goal is to start creating windows in your walls, to begin letting others see glimpses of your true self, to start practicing authenticity in safe spaces with safe people. This is where real transformation begins, with small acts of courage, with tiny moments of choosing truth over pretense, with baby steps toward being more real in your daily interactions. Maybe it starts with admitting when you're not okay instead of automatically saying, "I'm fine." Maybe it starts with sharing a dream you've been afraid to voice. Maybe it starts with letting someone see you cry instead of hiding your emotions. These might seem like small things, but they're revolutionary acts, because each time you choose authenticity over performance, each time you choose vulnerability over protection, you're not just changing your behavior, you're changing your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the world. And here's the beautiful thing. As you begin to practice being more authentic, you'll start attracting people who appreciate the real you. You'll start creating spaces where genuine connection can flourish. You'll start experiencing the kind of relationships that nourish your soul instead of just filling your social calendar. But this journey requires patience. It requires self-compassion, because you're not just changing behaviors, you're unwinding years of conditioning. You're challenging deeply ingrained beliefs about what makes you worthy of connection. You're learning a new way of being in the world. Your walls weren't built in a day, and they won't come down in a day either. This is a process of gentle unfolding, of gradual opening, of learning to trust yourself and others in new ways. It's about progress, not perfection. It's about moving in the direction of more authenticity, more truth, more real connection, one brave step at a time. As we move forward, I want you to consider this. What would it feel like to let just one person see a little more of the real you today? What would it feel like to take one small step toward being more authentic in your relationships? What would it feel like to start trusting that your imperfections aren't obstacles to connection, but invitations to deeper connection? The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real people. It needs more people who are brave enough to be themselves, who are willing to show up authentically, who are ready to create genuine connections instead of settling for surface-level interactions. And yes, this path requires courage. Yes, it involves risk. Yes, it might feel uncomfortable at first, but remember this, the discomfort of growth is always better than the pain of staying stuck. The risk of being seen is always worth taking compared to the guaranteed loneliness of hiding. Now that we understand why we feel lonely, even when we're not alone, and we've explored the walls we've built around ourselves, let's talk about practical steps toward authentic connection. Because understanding is only the beginning. Real transformation happens through action. I want to share with you what I call the practice of presence. This isn't about adding more activities to your life or trying to become a different person. It's about learning to be more fully present in the life you're already living. It's about creating spaces for genuine connection to emerge naturally. The first step in this practice is learning to be present with yourself. This might sound simple, but in our hyper-connected world, it's become a radical act. When was the last time you sat in silence, without reaching for your phone, without trying to fill the space with noise or distraction? When was the last time you really listened to your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own inner wisdom? Start with 5 minutes each day. Just 5 minutes of being present with yourself. No phone, no TV, no distractions. Just you sitting with whatever comes up. You might feel uncomfortable at first. You might notice anxiety, restlessness, or an urgent need to do something. That's normal. Stay with it. These feelings are messages from parts of yourself that have been waiting. As you practice this presence with yourself, you'll start noticing patterns. You'll begin to recognize the difference between your authentic voice and the voice of your conditioning. You'll start understanding your true needs, desires, and values, not the ones you've been told you should have, but the ones that genuinely resonate with your soul. The second step is what I call authentic expression. This isn't about sharing everything with everyone. It's about learning to express your truth in ways that feel both honest and appropriate. Maybe it's sharing a genuine feeling with a trusted friend instead of defaulting to, "I'm fine." Maybe it's expressing a different opinion in a meeting instead of going along with the crowd. Maybe it's writing in a journal, allowing yourself to put your unedited thoughts and feelings on paper. Remember, authentic expression isn't about being dramatic or creating conflict. It's about being truthful in a way that honors both yourself and others. It's about replacing automatic responses with conscious choices about how much of your... The third step is what I call conscious connection. This is about being intentional about the way you engage with others, instead of falling into habitual patterns of surface-level interaction. Start practicing deeper listening. When someone is speaking, try to listen not just to their words, but to the meaning beneath their words. Listen not to respond, but to understand is a powerful practice. In your next conversation, try to notice how present you really are. Are you thinking about what you're going to say next? Are you waiting for your turn to speak? Are you mentally judging or analyzing what the other person is saying? Just notice. Then practice bringing your attention back to the person in front of you, to their words, their expression, their energy. The fourth step is what I call boundaries of truth. Many of us think boundaries are about keeping others out, but healthy boundaries are actually about letting the right things in. They're about creating safe spaces where authentic connection can flourish. This means learning to say no when something doesn't align with your values. It means being honest about your limits, your needs, and your feelings. Start paying attention to how you feel in different situations and with different people. Notice when you feel energized and when you feel drained. Notice when you're being authentic and when you're performing. Use these insights to make conscious choices about where and with whom you invest your energy. The fifth step is what I call courageous vulnerability. This isn't about being vulnerable with everyone. It's about choosing to be vulnerable with people who have earned your trust. It's about sharing your struggles, your fears, and your imperfections in ways that create opportunities for genuine connection. Think of someone you trust, someone who has shown themselves to be worthy of your authenticity. Share something you've been hiding, not your deepest, darkest secret, but something real, something true. Maybe it's a fear you've been carrying, a dream you've been afraid to voice, or a struggle you've been facing alone. The sixth step is what I call authentic action. This means aligning your outer life with your inner truth. It means making choices that reflect your genuine values and desires, not just what others expect of you. This might mean changing the way you spend your time, the people you spend it with, or the activities you engage in. What in my life feels authentic and what feels like an obligation? What relationships nurture me and which ones drain me? What activities bring me alive and which ones leave me feeling empty? Use these answers to begin making small but significant changes in how you live your life. The seventh step is what I call sacred solitude. This is different from loneliness. Sacred solitude is chosen time alone that nourishes your soul. It's time spent getting to know yourself, listening to your inner wisdom, and recharging your emotional battery. Without this kind of healthy solitude, we can become dependent on others for our sense of self and well-being. Create regular times for sacred solitude. Maybe it's a morning meditation practice, a solo walk in nature, or an evening ritual of reflection. Use this time to check in with yourself, to process your experiences, and to reconnect with your authentic self. The eighth step is what I call community of truth. This means actively seeking out and creating relationships and communities where authenticity is valued in practice. Look for people who are doing their own inner work, who are committed to genuine connection, who can hold space for both light and shadow. This might mean joining a support group, finding a spiritual community, or creating a circle of friends committed to authentic connection. It might mean stepping away from relationships that require you to be less than authentic and investing more in relationships that encourage you to be more fully yourself. The final step is what I call integration and growth. This is about recognizing that authentic living and genuine connection are ongoing practices, not that. There will be times when you fall back into old patterns, times when fear gets the better of you, times when you choose safety over authenticity. That's okay. What matters is your commitment to getting back on the path. Keep a journal of your journey. Notice your progress. Celebrate your moments of courage. Learn from your setbacks. Share your experiences with others who understand. Let your struggles and your successes become part of your story of transformation. Remember, these practices aren't about becoming someone different. They're about becoming more fully who you already are. They're not about adding more to your life. They're about removing the barriers to authentic connection that already exists within you. As you begin to implement these practices, you'll likely notice something remarkable. The loneliness that brought you here begins to shift. Not because you filled your life with more people or activities, but because you're learning to be more present, more authentic, more genuinely connected, first with yourself and then with others. As we've been exploring this journey together, you might have noticed something interesting happening. Perhaps you're feeling a subtle shift in how you think about loneliness. Perhaps you're beginning to see it not as something to fix, but as something to understand. This is where real transformation begins, in this shift of perspective. Now let's talk about how to build meaningful relationships from this new place of understanding. Because once we start practicing authentic living, something remarkable happens. The quality of our connections begins to change. We start attracting different kinds of relationships into our lives, relationships that match our new level of authenticity. This journey isn't about becoming more likable or more socially successful. It's about becoming more real, more true to yourself, and letting your relationships flow from that truth. When you show up as your authentic self, you naturally attract people who appreciate and resonate with who you really are. Think about relationships like gardens. You can't force a garden to grow. You can only create the conditions that allow growth to happen naturally. The same is true for meaningful relationships. You can't force connection, but you can create the conditions that allow genuine connection to flourish. The first condition is presence. Real relationships require real presence, not the divided attention we become accustomed to where we're physically present but mentally elsewhere, not the partial presence where we're thinking about what to say next instead of truly listening, but full, embodied presence, where we're fully there with another person moment by moment. The second condition is truth. Not just the comfortable truths, but the difficult ones too. The truth of your feelings, your needs, your boundaries, the truth of your experiences, your struggles, your joys. When you commit to showing up truthfully in your relationships, you create space for others to do the same. The third condition is acceptance. This means accepting others as they are, not as you wish they would be. It means allowing people to have their own journey, their own pace, their own way of being in the world. When you cultivate acceptance, you create safety. And safety is essential for deep connection. Very many people get stuck. They think acceptance means accepting everything, including behavior that doesn't honor their own truth or boundaries. That's not acceptance. That's self-abandonment. True acceptance includes accepting your own needs and limits and honoring them in your relationships. This brings us to the fourth condition, reciprocity. Healthy relationships have a natural flow of giving and receiving. They're not one-sided. They're not about one person always giving while the other always takes. They're about two people showing up fully, each contributing in their own way to the growth and nurturing of the relationship. Pay attention to the flow in your relationships. Notice which ones feel balanced and which ones feel depleting. This isn't about keeping score. It's about being aware of the natural exchange of energy in your relationships and making conscious choices about where you invest your time and heart. The fifth condition is growth. Meaningful relationships aren't static. They're always evolving, always presenting new opportunities for learning and development. This means being willing to face challenges together, to work through conflicts, to learn from mistakes, to adapt and change as you both grow. But remember this, growth doesn't always mean getting closer. Sometimes growth means letting relationships evolve into different forms. Sometimes it means letting go of relationships that no longer align with who you're becoming. This isn't failure. It's part of the natural evolution of authentic living. The sixth condition is space. This might seem counterintuitive when we're talking about connection, but space is essential for healthy relationships. Space between you and others allows you each to maintain your individual identity, to pursue your own interests, to have your own experiences. This space actually strengthens connection rather than weakening it. Think about it like music. Without the spaces between notes, There would be no melody, just noise. The same is true in relationships. The spaces between connections are just as important as the connections themselves. These spaces allow you to maintain your sense of self while being in relationship with others. The seventh condition is forgiveness. Not the kind of forgiveness that excuses harmful behavior, but the kind that releases you from the burden of perfection, the kind that allows you and others to be human, to make mistakes, to learn and grow. This includes forgiving yourself for times when you fall back into old patterns or don't show up as authentically as you'd like. The eighth condition is commitment, not just to the relationship, but to your own growth and authenticity within the relationship. This means staying true to yourself even when it's uncomfortable. It means continuing to do your own inner work even as you build connections with others. It means remaining committed to truth even when silence would be easier. Every relationship in your life is teaching you something about yourself. Every interaction is an opportunity for greater self-awareness and growth. Even the challenging relationships, especially the challenging relationships, have something to teach you about who you are and what you need. As you create these conditions in your relationships, you'll likely notice something profound happening. The quality of your connections will begin to deepen. You'll start experiencing more moments of genuine intimacy, not just physical intimacy, but emotional and spiritual intimacy as well. You'll find yourself having more meaningful conversations, more authentic exchanges, more real connections. But this deepening happens naturally, organically, as a result of your own deepening relationship with yourself. As you become more authentic, your relationships become more authentic. As you become more present, your relationships become more present. As you become more true to yourself, your relationships become more true. This is the beautiful paradox of authentic connection. The more fully you become yourself, the more deeply you can connect with others, the more you honor your own truth, the more you attract relationships that honor that truth. The more you practice presence with yourself, the more present others become with you. It's something remarkable. As these authentic connections begin to grow in your life, you'll notice that the loneliness that brought you here starts to transform. It doesn't disappear completely. Loneliness is part of the human experience, but it changes. It becomes less heavy, less permanent, less defining. It becomes something that moves through you rather than something that defines you. As we come to this final part of our journey together, I want to speak to the part of you that's ready for real change. The part of you that knows there's something more than just understanding these concepts intellectually. Because transformation isn't just about knowing, it's about becoming. Everything we've explored together, the nature of loneliness, the walls we build, the practices for authentic living, the conditions for meaningful relationships, all of this is leading to one essential truth. The power to transform your experience of loneliness lies within you, not in finding the right people, not in filling your calendar with activities, not in achieving more success or gaining more recognition, but in your willingness to show up differently in your own life. This is where theory meets practice. This is where understanding becomes embodiment. This is where you begin to live what you've learned. And it starts with a decision to choose authenticity over approval, truth over comfort, real connection over safe isolation. Let me share with you what I call the integration path. 7 commitments that will help you transform everything we've discussed into lived experience. The first commitment is to radical self-honesty. This means committing to telling yourself the truth about your feelings, your needs, your fears, and your desires. It means stopping the internal pretense, the self-deception, the habit of pushing down your truth. What's true for me today? Then listen. Really listen to your own answer. The second commitment is to conscious choice. From this moment forward, choose to make decisions from a place of authenticity rather than habit. Before you say yes to an invitation, before you take on a new commitment, before you engage in any relationship, ask yourself, is this aligned with my truth? Is this choice coming from authenticity or from fear? Am I choosing this because it's what I really want or because it's what I think I should want? The third commitment is to daily practice. Transformation doesn't happen in moments of inspiration. It happens in moments of practice. Commit to daily actions that support your authentic self. This might be meditation, journaling, time in nature, creative expression, whatever helps you stay connected to your truth. Make these practices non-negotiable, as essential as eating or sleeping. The fourth commitment is to courageous action. Commit to taking one brave step each day toward more authentic living. Maybe it's speaking up when you would usually stay silent. Maybe it's setting a boundary you've been afraid to set. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you've been wanting to connect with. Small steps taken consistently lead to profound change. The fifth commitment is to conscious community. Begin actively creating and nurturing relationships that support your authentic self. This might mean having difficult conversations with current friends about your need for deeper connection. It might mean seeking out new communities where authenticity is valued. It might mean being the one who initiates more meaningful conversations. The sixth commitment is to ongoing growth. Accept that this journey never really ends. There's always another layer of truth to uncover, another level of authenticity to embrace, another depth of connection to explore. Commit to seeing each challenge, each setback, each moment of discomfort as an opportunity for growth. The final commitment is to radical compassion for yourself and others. This journey isn't always easy. There will be times when you fall back into old patterns, times when fear gets the better of you, times when you choose safety over truth. Meet these moments with compassion. Remember that you're not just changing behaviors, you're rewiring patterns that have been in place for years. Now let me speak directly to your heart for a moment. I know this journey can feel overwhelming. I know it can seem easier to stay in the familiar pain of loneliness than to risk the uncertain path of transformation. I know there's a part of you that's afraid of being seen, afraid of being rejected, afraid of being hurt. But I also know this, the pain of remaining closed is greater than the pain of opening up. The cost of hiding your true self is greater than the risk of showing up authentically. The emptiness of surface-level connections is more painful than the temporary discomfort of creating real ones. You're not alone in this journey. Every person in this room, every person you meet on the street, every person you see living what looks like a perfect life, we're all navigating this same human experience. We're all learning how to be more real, more authentic, more genuinely connected. The difference is in the choice. The choice to remain unconscious to these patterns or to wake up to them. The choice to continue hiding behind walls or to begin carefully, consciously taking them down. The choice to settle for surface-level connections or to dare to create something deeper. As you leave here today, I want you to remember this. Your loneliness is not a flaw in your character. It's a call to greater authenticity. Your desire for deeper connection is not a weakness. It's a sign of your emotional intelligence. Your willingness to face these feelings and do this work is not just courageous. It's transformative. Every time you choose authenticity over pretense, you're not just changing your own life. You're contributing to a world where genuine connection becomes more possible for everyone. Every time you show up as your real self, you're giving others permission to do the same. Every time you create space for authentic connection, you're helping to heal not just your own loneliness, but the collective loneliness that so many of us carry. This is your invitation to a different way of being. This is your opportunity to transform your relationship with loneliness from one of suffering to one of growth. This is your chance to create the kind of connections your soul has been yearning for. The journey begins with a single choice. The choice to be real, to be authentic, to be fully, unapologetically yourself. Everything else flows from that choice. Everything else becomes possible from that foundation. So I ask, are you ready? Are you ready to choose truth over comfort? Are you ready to choose authentic connection over safe isolation? Are you ready to begin this journey of transformation? The time is now. The place is here. And the person who can make this change is you. Thank you.